Yeah, the question could be on the exegesis of the text itself. It could be on the method. It could be on the application.
Easy one.
Whichever. Yeah, go ahead. Oh no, James.
View premarital sex.
Sorry. Can you repeat that?
How should we view premarital sex? Especially for
Clearly,
those who are dating or engaged.
Right. So clearly, it's a damnable sin, right? It's quite a damnable sin. Legally, what you should do, the man should pay dowry, right? The man should pay dowry, and then you involve the dad, ask him what they should do next, right? So let's say two-person, a guy and a girl, they're dating, and then suddenly they sleep with one another, and the girl gets pregnant, right? What the guy should do, regardless, the guy should pay for her dowry. In a sense, he should make her marriageable again, right? That's the whole point. And the father can decide if this guy is a schmo, or maybe they were both godly, but they made a really stupid mistake one day, so they can marry each other. That's just kind of the whole legal aspect. But what do you mean by, does that answer your question, or?
Does that help, Jisung?
Oh, okay. That was Jisung's question.
That was Jisung's question.
Yeah, but I don't know, like if those two are engaged, like they have the if they're engaged, like the guy proposed to a girl, and if they accidentally did it, then how should we see this issue?
Yeah. So
the game is interesting because of how engagement works, how engagements work now compared to back then.
Yeah. So
yeah, go ahead, Marco.
We don't care how engagements are defined by the world today, right? I said, biblically, if they're engaged, right, they're in a relationship, none of them are married, and they have sex out of marriage, that's not capital punishment, right? We don't stone them to death. But the man must, it's a must, the man must pay dowry for her. The man must be whipped if needs be. He needs to be disciplined, and he needs to make her marriageable financially and all that, right? And then the father should decide. That means consultation is required. Whether was this a genuine mistake, right? Was this a real bad mistake that the woman and the man partakes in, but they actually care about one another? They just made a really stupid, sinful mistake, which everyone does at some point in their life. So can they proceed to marriage? Because now she has conceived. Or the dad can decide, you know what, no, you're a schmo, piss off. But you still have to pay for my daughter's dowry. Either way, that's going to depend on the context. And so I pray that the family who goes through that kind of stuff would think it out biblically. Oh, but again, remember, the authority is not on the church, it's not on the guy or the girl, it's on the father. Okay, so the father must be involved significantly.
Yeah. So Jisung, does that help?
So we can say that regardless of the situation or what is a special case, sex outside marriage is definitely a sin, right?
It's definitely a sin.
It's definitely a sin.
The punishment is grievous.
How you deal with it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
The guy is whipped, he's fine, right? So it's clearly not a small thing.
Okay.
Now,
thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. All right. So now Colette asked an interesting question, because it does play into, because I come from a non-Christian background technically, so that I don't even know how my family will even play a part. In fact, my sister's living with her boyfriend. Yeah, it's on record now, you know. So big suck. But if the father of the girl is a non-Christian, and let me extend that to the father doesn't really even care, like he's not even involved in that sense.
Yeah.
Like let's say he's just loosely
involved in a way, right?
Yeah, like just extend that, like make it both. How should it be applied?
So if it's a man, right, then easy. The man is free, right? The man eventually becomes himself. If he dies by himself. If he takes a wife, he takes a wife by himself, right? His dad doesn't help him get his future bride. That's kind of what I'm saying. So for a guy, it's simpler. For a woman, right? Let's say the girl is converted. She's a Christian, but she has a non-Christian dad, and she lives in a non-Christian household, let's say completely. And this man finds this woman, and of course wants to marry her. Again, what should he do? He should still take into account the father's accountability, right? So she can argue, my dad doesn't get it. He's just going to get in the way. That's not the case. The man should fight for the girl. And I do, Michael Foster, a non-tenant, has a good point on this, whereby they say it's kind of like what I said. They have to fight this. They have to rescue her from this kind of Philistine culture, right? Because that's essentially what he's trying to do. He's trying to marry this woman, take her into his hands, which he believes biblically is better than this Philistine household. But as he does so, he must obey God's ordinances, which means if the dad decides to get in the way, he must fight it. He must fight him biblically, right? He must say, no, I can prove to you that, I can take care of your daughter, and I don't have to exactly make you hate me in a way. You get what I mean? It's like you have to get the girl in a way that her whole family doesn't hate the Christian man. And that's going to be very complicating. But if he does so, right, that's actually quite a powerful symbol of marriage, whereby he really does rescue her from a Philistine background, right? So that's how I would say, still respect God's ordinance, still respect the father, who he is, but there is room for you to disagree with the father and even fight for the right to be her head, in a sense. So
What about if the guy, if the father isn't really even involved?
the father is not even involved. So,
Like
the father
like
doesn't-
even like it's like such an egalitarian like circumstance at that point, where
Yeah.
literally they're just letting the kid do what they want
right.
up
So
until that point.
the kid does whatever they want. I think that's what's happening as well, right, nowadays. What should happen is that, again, partly we should make a culture where there's real accountability, there's real biblical accountability, but we don't make everyone bitter along the way, right? That's usually what happens. If it's like, I like her, the family doesn't really care, we're just gonna get married. When they do that, they despise their family, right? They despise their family, and what's the kids gonna learn? Well, they might say, oh no, it's not gonna affect the kids. Yes, it does, right? God specifically said so. The way you brought up your kids, that's the way they will go. So if you despise, right, if you skip over your family's involvement, right, if you say they don't care, don't get them involved, then guess what? Your kid will have the same upbringing. They will have the same kind of idea, right? You want to get involved, you want to have authority over their marriage, but they're like, no, you didn't care about your parents. I'm not going to care about you in my marriage. So learn that you're not alone. You're in a culture. You're living in a culture. Don't make everyone hate each other, right? Don't make families not care about each other. One of the greatest thing growing up in a Christian household is that I know my grandparents. I'm able to care about them, and it's not as if my dad's grandparents or my mom's grandparents are so separated we can't even talk. No, they come together for Christmas. We come and worship together. That's how it should be, and it should be a culture thing. So if your parents don't care, if your parents didn't start, then you should start, right? Don't complain saying, my parents never cared, so I'm not going to care. No, they didn't care. Get them to care, and you yourself must care. Create a culture. That's what marriage is. Again, just repeating what I said before. we think about household as just the, the mother, the father, and the children, right? When actually household is much broader than that. Biblically, a household is able to go to war, and so we should not have a truncated view on a household. So yeah, that's how I would say. Any more questions regarding that?
Yeah.
I got one.
Okay.
Go.
So like the context for Deuteronomy 22, the one the woman caught in adultery.
Right.
The both of them were executed because the context was the married woman was caught in an act with a man
Mhm.
who knew that the woman was married, right?
Yeah. Right.
And
So-
so then only both was executed.
Yeah. So
What if?
go ahead.
Should I proceed?
Yeah.
Continue my
Go ahead.
question? Okay. So what if like maybe the man did not know the woman was actually married?
What?
What?
Okay. Sorry. I get the idea. So the woman is married, right?
Ah.
And then let's say she goes to a nightclub, pretends that she's single, sleeps with a guy, right? Clearly, that's sex out of marriage, right? Clearly, the guy should pay some kind of dowry or get disciplined, right? You get the idea. But if it's adultery, right? Meaning, but it is adultery on the part of the woman, right? That for sure is true, right? It's adultery on the part of the woman because she knows herself, right? She knows she's married, and yet she's going off to a club, sleeping with other guys, right? You get the idea? So for the woman, it's capital punishment still. For the guy, he has to, get disciplined and, of course, become defamed because he sleeps around with women. But the capital punishment is for the adulterer, always. So for those married but still sleeps around with other people, the punishment will always forever be death.
Okay.
Hopefully that answers the question.
Okay.
Yeah. So when talking about biblical law, the difficult part is simply just that. Jerusalem, right? Theocratic Israel is not constitutional. It's not on a common law basis. It's on a case by case basis. So you just kind of have to work out the case slowly. Yeah. Any?
Okay. Got one question.
Okay.
Okay, sent privately in this case.
Okay.
If the situation where the girl does not have a father,
Okay.
does that mean the exception takes place now that the mother would have to take on the role of the father?
Right. That
Let's
is
say they never got remarried even, or like they didn't the woman did not remarry in any sense.
Yeah, right. Which is why again, verse 9, quite important there, right? If a widow. So let's say Lydia, right? People would argue that we don't really know Lydia. She's probably married, but still has the head of the household. That's not true. If she's the head, if the woman becomes the head, it's either because she gets divorced or her husband died before her, right? So let's say we do have a case where there's no father, the husband either died or gets divorced. Hopefully it's not the case. The mother, right, the wife becomes the head of the household, right? She doesn't magically enter back into her father's headship, and that's not the case. She becomes head. Not ideal, right? Not ideal, not exactly biblical, but we live in a fallen world, and it should show that this is actually a distortion. This is actually not good. I'm not saying the single woman is immediately sinning if she doesn't remarry, but it's unideal. What she should do is she should exercise authority like a head of the household. There are still some things that she cannot do, clearly, like bearing the sword, but in terms of courtship, she should care for the suitor. So hopefully that answers the question. If you
Anything else? Anybody?
okay. Yeah. If there is nothing, if there is no other question, then
I'll
Maybe
pause.
I ask one last one. I don't know whether
Go.
it'll take very long, so
okay.
I was
Go,
hesitating
go.
to ask.
Okay. Go ahead.
How do you think marriage plays in terms of like how does the church has relation with the marriage of their members?
Many people will object, but I will say this very clearly: absolutely nothing outside of the ceremony. Right.
So so that means like other than the priest or the pastors officiating the marriage, that's it, is it?
Yeah. So here's the idea: you read through all of the Old Testament, all of the New, and you realize that all the power during the courtship, during betrothal, is to the father. Right? The priest can do nothing, and if we're talking about today, right, let's say pastor, shepherds, all these things, all they can do is advise. Of course, they can speak authoritatively, saying your daughter is in great trouble. This guy is a non-believer. Right? That's the only authority they get. The Bible doesn't give the priest any authority if it's a biblical betrothal. Right? He fears God, she fears God. The priest has no say. So until then, until the point where we need witnesses in the church, in the temple, everyone says, I do. Who gives this man to marry, who gives this woman to marry this man? I and her mother. All these things. Only then does the church enter into the sphere of sovereignty of the marriage. Right? Because at that point, that becomes God's vow. But before then, the priest can do nothing but advise.
Oh, okay. So after that, then it's different lah.
After they get married,
Uh,
of course, the rod still belongs in the house.
uh-huh.
Okay? But let's say things like adultery, clearly adultery, right? Who does the investigation? The church. Right? Don't give the investigation to a third party. Don't find secular detective work. Let the church do the investigation. Was she a virgin? Did she commit adultery? Was he unfaithful? Did he beat up his wife? All these things must be conducted with the church. When punishment needs to be done, most likely it's the church, right? But when significant choices must be made, most likely it's the father. So, but the church never gets a say in things like, oh, you should marry this guy or that girl, or unless it's clearly outside of the Bible. So until then, the church literally has no say whatsoever. So yeah. James, share a bit. I think you're lagging.
Hello?
Yeah.
Can hear?
Yeah.
All right. Anybody else? Because otherwise, I think time's up.
Okay, I found a loophole. No, not really a loophole.
Hit it.
So like, okay. So remember just now you said like if the two fella not yet married and then they perform in bed already.
Yeah.
And then the guy is supposed to pay money to the father, right?
Yeah.
And then what if that the girl father cuckoo already, gone already, no more in this world. So pay the mother, is it?
Okay, let's say he's
Pay
dead.
the mother.
Then
Pay the mother.
you pay the mother lah.
Pay the mother lah.
Pay the house. Pay her to make her marriageable.
Pay the house.
The point is to make her marriageable again. Pay her dowry.
I know if both gone.
Both gone. She's in a very dangerous place. She should get married quick. But sadly, she has to take care of her own dowry. Right? At this point, I would say the church is still not able to give a say. Okay, the church still doesn't have the right to say you should marry him or you should not. The church can only suggest. I see churches trying to have some kind of authority in marriage. They have absolutely none outside of accountability, right? Outside of witnesses, punishing, and discipline. That's all.
So if both parents gong, then that's a personal problem.
Then that's, yes, sadly that's
Okay.
very concerning.
Good. Very good. Good.
That's your
Okay.
neighbor's problem. You should probably help her. Right.
What to do really?
Gosh. I think, yeah, that's all the time we have for now. Thanks, Marco, and thank you all for your questions. I hope you found that all fruitful. I think that was very interesting.
Nice sharing.